Hey everybody, it's Stephanie. In this video today, I'm going to teach you how to paint this starry sunset with mountains scene. First things first, you got to find a photo you like that inspires you. I follow a lot of really awesome photographers on Instagram. And when I find something I like, I save it or I take a screenshot of it. For this painting, we're going to use these colors, and I will list them in the description below. Lots of pinks, oranges, and blues, of course. This painting took me about 2 hours to paint, so if you have 2 hours uninterrupted to paint this at home, I think it's safe to go ahead and get all your paints out and not worry about them drying out before you're done. The first thing an artist needs to do is really observe their subject, in this case, a reference photo. And you want to study the colors, study the lines. I like to start with the light colors first in my sunsets. So I'm mixing a little bit of yellow, orange, and white. And then I'm just going to lay out the pattern of the clouds first. So I'm starting and just creating some lines to work with as I work through this painting. Something about acrylic painting is you work in layers. So your first initial strokes of color and lines on your canvas are not going to be, I should say, your final representation. So that takes a little bit of practice to understand how the colors are gonna come together through layers. And I'm playing with the blues. I use my hands quite a bit to mix the colors. Also water. With acrylic paints, you want to add water to make them pliable and workable with your canvas. So I'm moving on to the whites and the pinks, and again just mixing with my hands, laying them out with my brush, and then blending in circular patterns with my hands. Your hands are going to get messy, by the way. Next is a little bit more orange and more pinks. Again, this really is up to you, the colors that you play with. I think the main thing that you want to know is that you're going to work from your first layer is going to be darker, and then you're going to add lighter as you go. My method is I actually do a little bit of both. I do light, and then I do dark, and then I do light again, and then I do dark. I really do several layers just to come up with the look that I want to have. So this will be an individual preference for you, just how you want your painting to look in the end. this is how I do it. A little bit of blues. I have sped up the video just a little bit so that I can, you know, so it's not a 5-hour video. But I think you get the idea of what I'm doing here. I'm always adding water, by the way. Water is really important in acrylic painting. I can't stress that enough. A lot of people want to just apply paints to a canvas, and I suppose if that is the style you're doing, that's totally fine, but you're gonna get a lot more easier paint to work with if you're applying water often. You almost want it to be not quite the texture of an ink, but very thin down. And you'll again learn this in time once you find the colors and the paints that you like. All right, here we're gonna start creating our mountain line. Honestly, I start with white or black, white and black, which is what I'm doing here. When I paint, you guys, I have a lot of fun. I really do play. I'm not going for realistic when I paint. I'm just trying to create an atmosphere with my artwork. A feeling for me is more important than creating realism or perfection. And so it kind of depends on how I feel, but you do want to work with certain rules, you know. The closer something is to you, the darker it is, the more defined it is going to be. And, you know, so that means off in the distance, things are going to be lighter. And again, you know, we're working in layers, so we can come back to stuff, which I do a lot. And acrylic paint, one of the things I like about it is that it dries really fast. It's also one of the things that can be stressful to work with for some people, but I like that because it allows me to paint something, come back and correct it quickly, or work with it quickly. So I'm mixing a little bit of the green, the light green that I have, and the brown, and a little bit of yellow to create the foreground, which is this sort of hilly, grassy looking area. And again, we're just starting with our first layer, so we want to get just a general color. I am just playing with the color right now, but it looks like I found something I like. And then of course we want to leave a little bit of dark area for the little pathway that, the little trail down the center. You can put this trail wherever you like. And here I'm adding a little bit of black to this greenish brown yellow color that we've created for the foreground. I'm adding it to the corners, and to the very bottom of the piece, just to add a little bit of shadow here and bringing the viewer's attention to the big dance, if you will, of our painting, which is, you know, the mountains, the light on the mountains and the light coming off the hills in the foreground area. Okay, so here I'm just kind of playing around a little bit, dotting on some dark spots, adding a little shadow, a little depth to the foreground here, making it interesting. And playing with the light just really just playing with the light. I like to play around and see what looks good. Again, with acrylic paints, we're going to come back and work with some of this later. So I don't worry too much about what's going on right now. Messy, I am sometimes. So what we're going to do here is we're going to start making more light in our starry sky. So I'm going to mix a little bit of this pink and orange and create just like this lighter pinky orange color to work with. I'm going to water it down and just start adding it to the clouds, just to make the clouds more light, more interesting. Again, mixing with my hands, you want to make sure that you like the texture of your paint, that you can work with it. And this just means applying water. And I got a little pink here, just adding a little bit of light pink to the clouds. You can see how, our first layer of paint, it's going to look a lot more interesting as we continue to apply colors. And acrylic paints really don't take that long to dry, so this painting doesn't take long at all. I do have it edited here and sped up just a little bit, obviously, but not that much. I'm not a total spaz, despite what this video may look like. I would suggest, if there's something that you want to study a little closer, just pausing the video and going back over it. So adding white to my blues, again, just adding white to every color we've already worked with to bring more light to the clouds, to make it more, misty, cloudy look. But leaving a little bit of that shadow in the, behind it so that it, you can see the depth. That might have been too much white. But the best thing you can do is just work it in and come back to it, which is what I'm going to do here. As Bob Ross says, there are no mistakes, there's only happy accidents. So this little spot is way too much light I gave to this blue, so I'll just come back to that in a little bit after it dries. For now, we just work with it. And again, smoothing it out with your hands, blending it this way is also going to help it dry a little bit faster. You may need to take hand washing breaks because, eventually the paint on your hands is going to start rolling off onto your painting. So that's a helpful tip. When you start seeing that happen, go wash your hands. Here I'm adding a little bit of black, just very faintly. It's very watered down. I've added it to the purple and to the blue, and then watered it down quite a bit because this is going to be just a real thin layer just to add, again, bringing our focus to the center of the painting. creating depth in our skies. So very watered down, applying it quickly and then blending it all in with my hands. And as far as the brushes go, I just use what feels good at the moment. I have a ton of brushes available to me when I'm painting. I like to work, I'm very in the moment. I don't like to spend a whole lot of time cleaning my brushes while I'm working, so I do have a lot of brushes just out and ready while I'm working. So you can see we're just working in sections of the painting, and so I'm, one section dry, I let one section dry and then I move on to a different section. So I'm again adding more light to this orange cloud here. This is where a little bit of play can come in. Really make it yours. You just have to play with the colors. Where do you want light to be? Where do you want what shade do you like? This is where it all gets really personal, is when you're playing with the colors and playing with where you want it to be on your canvas. Like I said, I do have a reference photo that I'm working with, and I use it as a guideline, but I really do, once I get the idea in my head, I kind of take it from there. I use the reference photo as inspiration. I like the colors, I like the lines, I like the feel of the picture, and then I take that and make it my own. Especially when it comes to these starry landscapes. I mean, I also like a lot of stars. It's really hard for me to hold back on the stars, but I did hold back in this painting. You'll see that here in a little bit. I didn't apply a whole lot of stars. I wanted to keep it simple and easy to follow. But you can add, when it's time to start adding stars, you can add as many as you like. Make it whatever you want. So you do want to pay attention to your light source of your painting, and I do have a light source in this painting. It's actually coming from the top of the mountain, but there is some light over here on this left side of the painting, and happening in some kind of reflection, and it just looks really cool in the photograph. So I am bringing more light to that left side, more yellow and white, just to lighten it. I like to lighten it slowly, in layers. So here I'm actually adding a little bit more shadow to these clouds. You can see I've added some black to the purples, just barely, and it's super watered down, but I felt like these clouds here needed a little bit more shadow, a little bit more depth. You can also see I don't wash my brush that much. I mean, I really do. I either switch brushes or I keep the color inside my brush just to help you know, I think when you're working quickly like this and you're blending it anyways, it helps to create, you know, transition colors. That's really maybe a style choice of my own, but in this photograph, it's really cool. It almost looks like it's just reflecting off the snow in the mountain. And I like how, you know, it almost looks like glitter coming off the mountain, like a glitter sparkly star eruption. I'm definitely gonna play with that. So I'm gonna start playing with my stars here, and a lot of times we want to, you know, do white stars. We see white stars in the sky, but really you want to make your stars varying shades of your sky color. So here I'm taking a really light blue and dotting blue stars onto the blue sky. It's gonna look a lot better, a lot more, just a little more natural, I guess. I do add white stars at some point, but it comes last, so that we have varying shades of star colors. A sky full of stars. So I'm mixing some pink and orange here again, and I'm just adding, you know, layers of color. When I stepped back and looked at this piece up to this point, I really wanted a little more vibrancy, I guess, in the sky. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm adding a little bit more vibrant like color. And my paints are drying pretty quickly, so again, you're constantly adding water. And now I'm going to add a little black, actually, to create even more shadow in the sky. You know, if you ever go out and look at the sunset, it's not, you know, 5 colors. It's a whole bunch of colors and shadows and lights, and you really have to just, when you're painting it, just play with it and see if you like what's going on. And if you don't, just add more. So adding a little bit of light again. I think the main thing I'm trying to show you here is just how I play with these colors, and that's what gives me that's what gives my paintings the look that they end up having. Is just, you know, I really do mix and play with the colors quite a bit. And I'm not washing my brush here, so this is color upon color at this point. Something about, you know, painting and art is you kind of, you want to be really careful with with how you play with light. You don't want to do too much. It's because, you know, where you do put it, it's going to be really, really, I don't know, it's just going to make the rest of the painting pop. And I'm just working really, really lightly with color. Really, really very little bits of color on my brush. I think this painting is a good place to start because, you know, it really allows you to play with color and play with, you know, brush techniques and still come out with a beautiful painting. I really like these pink clouds. Something I run into as an artist, as a human being, actually, this happens outside of my art life. It happens in my other life, my real life. I'm very indecisive, and I think a lot of times my indecisiveness really shows up in my artwork too. Sometimes it comes together well and sometimes it's kind of a mess, but I think in the case of, you know, sunsets and stuff like that, it kind of works for me. Are you happy with your painting so far? It might be a good time to check in with the painting as a whole. I think I like what's going on here. So I'm adding a little bit of just cloudy mist. These colors are, I have, you know, my purple and I have my blue that I'm working with, and I'm just taking those up shade by shade, adding a little bit of white each time. This corner up here you can see is kind of not quite blended and smooth, so I am going to work with that and get those clouds to look a little more, you know, naturally flowing a little more naturally with each other. By adding a little bit of that same shade of pinkish purple It's really important not to get, frustrated with your work at any point. And if you do, just step away, come back to it later. Once you've had a chance to look at it, you'll start to see how, the ways you can resolve whatever is stumping you in the moment. Sometimes I have dreams about paintings where I'm like stuck, and I'll wake in the middle of the night and I'm like, I gotta paint this right now. I know exactly what to do. I usually don't actually get up though. I just stay awake and think about it. So you can see this is starting to blend, and those little spots up in the corner are starting to come together. That's really one thing I really do love that about acrylic paints, is like you can keep going over it and over it and over it. And I mean, yeah, you've got to learn when to stop. That's a really important lesson for any artist, is like knowing when to stop. You can overwork a painting. We're far from that though here with this. Alright, so we're going to work a little bit on our foreground here and our mountains. I'm coming in with some black just to add a little bit more details, make it more interesting. I'm using the side of my brush here just to kind of spot on. This is an angled brush I'm using, a small angled brush, and I'm just kind of using the edge to dot on the illusion of trees. Again, these are far enough in the back, far enough away from us that you don't need a lot of detail here. It's a little hard to see with the light I have over me shining, but so yeah, whites, grays here. I even added a little bit of yellow just to sort of begin to show that reflection on the mountain. Top of the mountain there's snow, so it's not white. Even though it is white, we want to paint it white. It is going to be reflecting what the sky is doing. And I'm gonna show you another technique here in a little bit to enhance this. For now, I'm just working with various shades of white and gray and playing with it, just seeing what I like, remembering where my light is, which is right there in the center actually, but it does reflect off to the left, so the light to me I'm going to call the left. So you can see I've got a little white in my brush, different colors, and just letting my colors come together on my brush to create some kind of middle color here. Just little spots here and there. that's one thing that's fun about, you know, doing the sunsets. You know, anything off in the distance is not super detailed, you know. These paintings are actually really pretty without a lot of detail. And that's what makes them easy and fun. So I'm gonna create another row of mountains actually behind this this mountain we have here in front of us. And you can see I'm trying to find the color because it is going to be a little lighter the farther away it is. And looks like I've settled on just a very light grayish purple here. Just adding just enough to make it like, oh, there's mountains back there, but not super distinct. You know, and that can really, I guess, be the tough part when you're working in varying shades of gray is just playing with those shades, knowing that it's lighter towards the back, more distinct as you move, you know, towards the front. And so you may have to adjust your, you know, your areas of your painting. This is my second how-to video, and so I'm really just playing with how this looks, if this is a usable video for people to actually learn from. I did want to show you all the steps as I do them, and I didn't want to make a super long video, so I sped it up, hopefully so that you could, you know, see what I'm doing and work along with me, you know, being able to fast forward and pause and whatever. I've gone back to this foreground here, again, just adding more details, more light. You know, as you work with the light, you start to see like, oh, I need a little more light here. It takes a lot of practice, but it can be done. It's a lot of fun. You know, main thing is just play and have fun. Pick pretty colors, so if you mess up, it's still pretty. If you have any commentary or feedback for me, I love friendly critiques. If you want to leave, you know, your thoughts in the comments section, let me know how I can improve a how-to video. I've watched Bob Ross my whole life, and I have no idea, no clue how he painted a beautiful painting in 30 minutes. It baffles me. All right, at this point, my painting is completely dry, and if you're happy with this, you could go ahead and call it finished. I actually want to add another touch to this. It's called a wash. I'm going to add another layer over the top of my painting just to tie all these colors together. From where I'm looking, they look a little bit just I don't know, a little, I don't know the word, but I want to tie them all together, give them all a tone. And so I'm mixing a little bit of purple and a little bit of blue. I'm really watering it down and just lightly washing over the top of my dry painting here. And as I move down, I'm adding, you know, a little bit more color. I'm going to add a little pink to the purple here, just working with the colors that are in my painting. But this is just going to give them more vibrancy. I really like my colors to pop, to be bright. And you know, this allows those colors underneath to really kind of glow through the layer of paint that I'm adding now. So blending right away with this color, with this wash. And you might not be able to see, but I am adding, you know, orange and pink as I work down through the orange and pinks of my painting. So I'm adding absolutely no white. So these are just pure color. So that they're, you know, super translucent and just allows the colors to really pop out, which I think you can see here. I'm also going to continue this down through the mountain, which I'm going to show you here. This will bring that color from the sky into the snowy mountaintop. It'll look a little more naturally reflective. Main thing here is this is just very watered down. You know, if you need more color, if you need more, you know, you can always add more. I always start with the very thin layer so that it's just barely there. But you can see that this really, it's thin, but it ties the colors together. They just look a lot more, you know, natural and flowing to me. At this point, again, you could stop. I'm gonna, you know, go in and add a little more light. I'm gonna add another layer to this. Some of the spots I, you know, muted the oranges, so I want my oranges to really pop. I'm gonna go in and add just a little bit more vibrancy. Mainly I think with this painting I want you to see the layers that go into a piece of art like this. You know, it's and not to get frustrated with that first layer of paint. There's so many layers that go into, you know, this kind of thing, and if you're patient and if you continue to add layers and work with what you have, you can achieve this effect. This is a question I get asked a lot about, just how to achieve that glowing, that glow that I use in a lot of my paintings. It's just a lot of layers, you know, and don't think I mentioned this in the beginning of the painting, but I do start with a black canvas. And that allows me to work up the light. And you know, the wash technique that I showed you, you can use that at any time. And do as many of those as you need to. If you feel like your colors are discombobulated, they're not connecting, they're, you know, completely different families of color. I don't know how to describe this. But if they don't feel like they're flowing together, if they don't look the way you want them to, you can tie them together with a wash like that. I don't always have the terminology. That's something you'll learn from me, is I make up words, I make up phrases. I'm very self-taught as an artist. Honestly, I was fortunate enough to be able to play with art. And just sort of educate myself through trial and error for a lot of years. Yeah. Okay, just a few more stars. And I think we'll call this done. I just wanted to add just another layer of stars. Again, when you do the wash, it's going to mute, you know, the stars that you have already. So I like to have varying degrees of brightness in my stars. Again, that adds a little bit, makes it a little more, just more natural, more believable. So I'm going to add a few more here. You know, and through the clouds, you can add little tiny bright spots. I wouldn't go too crazy in the lower parts of the sky. It kind of depends on how natural you want the stars to look. I mean, you know, you don't really see stars through the clouds, but I like to make sparkling clouds. You know, and we're at the point now, at any point you could call this done. It's a pretty painting at this point, so. I think I'm just adding a little bit more sparkliness to the to my little cloud eruption here. Alrighty, last step. My painting is completely dry and I'm just going to varnish it. This is a medium, or I guess a satin gloss varnish. And it's just going to add a little bit of shine. Some of my paints are shiny, some of them are not so shiny, so I like to tie them all together in the end with the clear varnish.
And of course we need to sign it.
And that's it, folks. I hope you like your starry sunset painting and that you've enjoyed this little tutorial of mine, found it helpful. I appreciate you watching, and I will see you next time. Thank you.